Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. John Kelly, profiler here, and welcome. Welcome to today's show. This is going to be our profile today on Bridge Guy. The question is Bridge Guy Richard Allen? We want your feedback. We want you to chime in on this. We did this profile 4 years ago, before anything else was out there, before anybody had any information, before anybody knew anything about Richard Allen. And I want to add that Richard Allen is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Okay. So there's no question about it. But we did this profile on Bridge Guy, not on Richard Allen. But I want to hear from you guys if you think the profile fits Richard Allen. Okay. We want your feedback. And please like the show if you like it. And please subscribe if you like what we're doing. But we're interested in what you think on this. And the other thing I'd like to do is send our deepest condolences out to Libby and Abby and their families and friends. This, again, is a very, very sad situation. And I've been saying that all the way up to part 54. We're on part 54. And I've got to tell you that all these years later, this is still a very sad and extreme situation. Also, the other thing I want to bring out is my book, Discovering Lazarus, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly of John Kelly Profiler. Thank you guys so much for all your purchases. Thank you so much for making it a success. It's how I came into counseling, moved on into the profiling field after being a psychotherapist and eventually chasing serial killers all around the country. So I think you'll find it interesting. Again, Discovering Lazarus, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly of John Kelly. Also, too, I think that, we're pretty much ready. But after each segment that you hear, I will come on and critique it in the present time. This was done 4 years ago without any information from law enforcement. You know how tight they were in the case. You know how they kept it tamped down. I don't blame them a bit. I would have done the same thing. Okay, maybe a little bit more I would have released to get some feedback from the public. Don't forget, child killer on the loose. That's why we took the shot with this profile. That's serious stuff. Okay. All righty, here we go. Thank you so much. And I'll talk to you after the show.
Well, just because of the distance from, I guess, initially talking to them and, I guess somehow getting them to go with him, either probably with a knife or a gun. We're not totally sure which, but for him to march them that distance, it's quite unusual. And we've done, hundreds of cases, and I can't think of too many where it's done this way. So all that distance, what's going on in the perpetrator's mind, what's going on in the victim's mind, quite extraordinary, as these cases go. But you could almost, if you want to get a peek into his mind, it had to be pretty sadistic to take two young girls and march them, for half a mile, 3/4 of a mile, and then eventually, kill them. That would take some degree of a sadistic mind to do that, because certainly at any time you could have changed your mind and thought about it and just left them, but he went all the way. obviously, and probably that's most likely was the intention.
Hey there, you were just listening to Dr. Edward Mirsky. He's a psychologist. He is a doctor of psychology. He's a PsyD, doctor of psychology. And he's been trained by the best, I think the best in some of the best in the country. He went through Dr. Arnold Lazarus doctorate school over at Rutgers. Really great. So listening to what Dr. Mirsky said, I agree. I mean, you have to understand, he said this guy is a sadist. I truly believe that. There's no question about it. These girls got to be scared to death. I think the way it went down, the girls got to the end of the bridge. Here comes bridge guy at the end of the bridge. I'm pretty sure I heard a click. I think a lot of people heard some kind of click, a gun being clicked. Okay, guys, down the hill. Okay. They're scared to death. This guy's got a gun on them, and off they go down the hill. And, then they go on this hike. And I don't know, because don't forget, this was 4 years ago, if this was a quarter of a mile, if this was a half a mile to 3/4 of a mile. I think it's somewhere around a half a mile that he marched them, but they had to be filled with fear. And the way these guys operate, they tell their victims, just do what I tell you and you will not get hurt. They might even say, listen, we're interested in a little sex. I'm interested in a little sex, but just don't run and you won't get hurt. I won't kill you. If you run, I'm going to kill you. And if one of you get away, I'll kill your friend. So that usually keeps them both together. Of course, he's lying through his teeth. They always do. All right. But this guy's definitely a sadist. There's no question about it.
I think these two young girls were frightened, just scared to death. And, he could be taking them away for a sexual reason or, in fact, to murder them. I don't think they know that, but I do think that they're absolutely frightened at this point in time.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Commander-in-Chief of Detectives, Frank Adamson from Washington State. He was the commander-in-chief of all the detectives on the Green River case. He ran the Green River case. And I have to tell you, all the credit in the world to the whole Green River Task Force, which I am proud to have been a part of. And that's why I met Frank. Super detective, one of the best I've ever met. Okay, there's no question about one of the best in the country. And Frank is talking about what I said a little bit earlier. Frank is focusing right in on it. That these girls were extremely scared, and this guy, was just marching them away, and they had all these things going through their mind. What's he after sex? Is he going to kill us? Is it both? Whatever. So definitely, for somebody to march somebody that far, whether it's a quarter of a mile, half a mile, 3/4 of a mile, I mean, that's a very cruel and sadistic person. And these kids were really scared, and hopefully, not too scared, but I think they were pretty afraid. Now, Frank, you have him as being a white male, 5'8" to 5'10", 200 pounds. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. What we mean by organized is he's got this thing planned. He knows what he's doing. He's outside. He's unlikely to be caught. If you observed him walking across that bridge, he was looking behind him at times to see if anyone was around. He takes the victims off the path, out of sight of other people. So he's planned this. He's gone into great detail. He's got some kind of weapon to control them. So we know at least up to the point that he kills them, that he's this whole scene is controlled.
Yeah, the scene is controlled. He's in control. As you say, he's taking them out of sight, which was interesting to me how we knew how to get them below the tree line so nobody could see. I mean, nobody could see that particular area and where he was from any direction, that he was pretty much confident, that he had them in his control and kill zone, and nobody was going to be able to see. I mean, they weren't going to be able to see from the bridge. They weren't going to be able to see from the other trails. He had them where he wanted them, at the time he wanted them. So that's why I think and I think we all agree on this, that he had to be extremely familiar with that particular area, and was very confident that he was not going to be caught. And you're right. Now, if you're looking at this and you're seeing Frank talking about how organized this bridge guy was, what we also have to take into concern, and Frank did an excellent job on breaking that down. The biggest part for me is the fantasy. See, I've been so familiar and so organized because he has gone over this in his mind hundreds of times. This is his fantasy. This was a fantasy kill, as far as I'm concerned. This guy was thinking about a power control, sexually dominant kind of fantasy, had it planned out where it was going to happen, knew he'd have to carry certain weapons in order to carry it out, and did it. It was extremely organized, and he had it extremely planned in his mind. Now, we're still up in the air why it was Libby and Abby. Bottom line, and more to come on that, but bottom line, was he somehow stalking them? Question, right? And again, we really want your feedback on this. It's very important to us on what you think. And again, we're not saying this is Richard Allen, but this is the bridge guy that we're breaking down here, breaking down this profile on.
Yeah, the fact that the girls had a video of him, and when you observe what he did and how he controlled them, and I mean, he had obviously a weapon, and so when he told them to get down that hill, they did it. There's no question. I mean, there was no struggle, anything. You could see that this guy was in charge of the two victims at this point in time. And control is often a major fact in at least serial killings. And it's, you just could see that by the way this particular person operated, that he was that he needed to control his environment.
Yeah, again, that's Frank talking about control, and again, the focus being that control is the dominant feature in the fantasy that I just mentioned earlier. That's pretty much what it's all about, as I was alluding to, the control and the sexual dominance of the victim or victims.
Sure, yeah. It just seems this case, many other cases where they're, like I said, they can function in society, they can hold jobs, blue collar, sometimes even white collar, but they're usually viewed by others as being a little odd, strange, weird. Some of the things they say don't quite match. We're not talking about like psychotic here, like schizophrenia or any bipolar disorder, dude. It's just their personality is just somehow off. if you want a psychiatric label, sometimes we call them like schizoid personality disorders. Um, so they don't easily blend in. They usually have um, you know problems making relationships, keeping relationships. They can have relationships with family members and maybe um, said even some coworkers, but even the coworkers probably view them as somewhat strange and odd. Um, but interesting, I guess this is where they maybe try to compensate in some way by taking control. But they think they have some insight into the fact that they're strange and odd. They're intelligent. They're not, below average intelligence. So they have some degree of insight, but it's almost like baked in the DNA. They're just strange, odd people. But yet, when it comes to, I said in this case, taking control and um, wanting to be dominant, a top dog, that this is their opportunity to do that. Where in many social situations, they're kind of in the background or very reserved. Um, so it's almost like they're acting out, and they can do it in a very pathological way.
Uh, when you look at these kinds of people, I mean, they're structured, they're organized, but like you're saying, it's all part of this control because they're knowing that they're not a social butterfly, and they know it's hard for them to adapt with other people, or they have certain social issues. There we have Dr. Mirsky, and Dr. Mirsky's talking about possible diagnosis of a schizoid personality, and he's talking about people being weird or strange, and what I have to ask you is, this is what we're thinking about Bridge Guy. We're thinking he has a hard time socializing. People see him as being a little weird, a little strange. They might pick up on that. And he would have a hard time socializing with other people. Maybe come across too as being a bit of a control kind of guy, and really playing the role in certain situations to look like a top dog, right? A question I have is, what do you guys think? Even though this is Bridge Guy, do you guys believe this is Richard Allen? And again, Richard Allen is innocent until proven guilty. But I've got to tell you, there is a situation that took place with a coworker of Richard Allen when he worked at Walmart. How true it is, I don't know, but she's on there on YouTube, and we'll put up a link for you, to her story and her days working with Richard Allen. And I'll tell you what, based on her working with him or for him at the time, she's led us to believe that, he's a pretty strange and weird dude, So if you guys want to take a look at this and give us your feedback on it, but bottom line is, we're interested in your comments. Again, this is 4 years before anybody even heard of Richard Allen in this case. So, or 4 years ago. So, it's and I don't think we heard of Richard Allen 4 years ago for sure. All righty. We know there are three primary intake senses. We know there's usually visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. I mean, there's three primary intake senses. Kinesthetic being feelings, having feelings, right? Well, with these types of guys, usually we can eliminate the kinesthetic intake sense, the feelings intake sense, because they don't usually have any, remorse or guilt. They don't have a whole lot of feelings really for anybody, really. Maybe their children or whatever, family members, they have some, but really they walk around not caring a whole lot about how other people feel or how animals feel. That's why there's a lot of them start off slaughtering, torturing animals. There's a lot of animal cruelty in a lot of these guys' backgrounds to begin with. And something we talked about, that this guy is probably some type of hunter and is probably, knows how to slaughter animals as well. Okay. But getting back to his primary intake sense, I truly believe his primary intake sense is visual. Because if you take away the kinesthetic, the feeling intake sense, you're left with visual or auditory, right? Now, this guy is a man of very few words, okay? Guys, down the hill. Guys, down the hill, all right? Now, those are the only sound bites that we've heard, and supposedly he has grabbed these girls at the abduction point, and then he has walked them approximately half a mile to three-quarters of a mile away, and we haven't heard any more of his voice, okay? Now, I would have to believe that law enforcement definitely has more auditory information. However, I believe if they had more sound bites on him particularly, they would have released those along with the sound bites of guys down the hill. Because the more sound bites of him, his voice, that they could put out there, the better shot they have of somebody recognizing his voice. So why I think he's not auditory is because he is a man, again, of few words. Guys down the hill. He's not a talker. He's, like we said earlier, he's not a social butterfly. Okay. He's not going to be a commentator on, the news next week, and he's going to be yakking it up all over the place. This guy's very visually oriented. So we remove we remove auditory intake sense, we remove kinesthetic intake sense. We have a very visual predator here who was able to scope out the area, scope out his victims, follow them, get them in, see them go into his control zone, made sure he wasn't seen by anybody else. He was able to do the deed. He was able to kill these poor girls, whatever else he did to them, and he was able to get away supposedly unseen. Only thank God again for Libby and her camera and getting him, on film, on camera, and that's how this guy is going to get brought down. He's going to get brought down by people's tips, and he's going to be brought down most definitely by a little girl from her grave. Okay. All right, folks. So now you've heard from me going on a little bit about, his visual primary intake sense. And that's something I specialize in. I specialize in primary intake senses. And again, most of these guys, most of these predators, and it's coming out now, it's something we've been doing for many years. I was trained early on with this stuff, but we're realizing more and more and more that these predators are extremely visual, and that is their primary intake sense. Not to say they can't talk or they can't feel something, maybe for the children or whatever, but extremely visual. They are very focused on what they see, and they want to see it, in their victim and in their victim's eyes. I've even talked to various serials on this. But also what it tells us is that he's very familiar with the area, and he knew the area very, very well, extremely visually familiar with the area, knew how to stay out of sight. So he's had to walk that trail many times. He's had to be in that area many times. Okay. And along with being out of sight, I mean, out of sight, out of mind. I mean, this guy just ran around and knew exactly where to go, knew exactly where to take these girls, And as we talked about earlier, underneath the tree line and everything. And to be honest with you, to go unseen. I mean, Bridge Guy went unseen. Now, again, Richard Allen is innocent until proven guilty, but nobody knew who Bridge Guy was. And Richard Allen, we really only heard of him when he put himself on there, put himself on the bridge. You're going to look down and see the fish from 60 or 70 feet up in February, right? So very interesting. But again, he's innocent until proven guilty. This is Bridge Guy we're focused on and doing the profile on. Do you guys think it matches with Richard Allen is the question. And again, visual on the bridge to look down and see the fish. Okay. So I want you to, try and, soak all this up, and absorb it. So that's one part of it. Then
I agree that I think he is visual. I think he's basically an insignificant person that has no moral sense and victimizes these young girls because it makes him feel powerful. And it's almost like a drug for this type of individual. And he's just a nobody.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I would say, yeah, he operates very visually. You said he's a man that probably doesn't have great language skills. There's probably some deficits there. So he's a man that, just doesn't communicate a lot. But, his language skills, I said, probably are somewhat deficient, communication skills, but which you can say with his visual intake sense, that's how he operates in the world at his optimal level is through the visual sense.
Yeah, you just heard there Frank Adamson going on about Bridge Guy being an insignificant person. He feels insignificant. He's insecure, low self-esteem, that kind of thing. That's why he needs his power and control to boost up his ego. And that's why he tries to have this sexual dominance over his victims. So, Bridge Guy's a pretty insecure, low self-esteem kind of guy. And Frank brought out too that he has no moral compass. He's really doesn't have a whole lot of morals. He only cares about his instant gratification and how he's feeling. He's not too concerned about other people. Doesn't have, like we said, most of these guys don't have usually any guilt or remorse. So they don't have much of a moral compass at all. Then the other thing you heard Dr. Mirsky. You heard Dr. Mirsky talking about, that he probably has a hard time with speaking with people and with language skills. He may not be a great talker, and he may, have some kind of learning disability. That's what we're looking at too. A lot of these guys have learning disabilities. What's interesting to me when it comes to that is when Richard Allen, and again, innocent until proven guilty, right? But when Richard Allen wrote that note to the judge that he wanted the state to pay for an attorney for him so he could have an attorney represent him and his family because he didn't have the money. It was too expensive. He didn't realize how expensive it was. In that letter that he sent to that judge, in nowhere on that letter, no place, nowhere, okay, did he say, hey, I'm innocent. I'm innocent. Okay. I need help here. I need financial help. Okay. I need somebody to represent me. I need representation, legal representation. I am an innocent man. I mean, if you got accused of killing two little girls, I mean, would you put that in the letter? So maybe I'm wrong. You guys tell me. Okay. But if you were arrested for killing two little girls and you had to send a letter to the judge looking for an attorney and the state to pay for an attorney to represent you legally, wouldn't you insist that you're falsely accused, that you're not guilty? Right? So, yeah, let me know what you think, folks.
Yeah, it definitely appears that this wasn't a random act on the killer's part. It seems pretty obvious that he had some foreknowledge that these young girls were going to be on that trail on that particular day, and and he was equipped for it. He could have run into other people, but he didn't. You know, and um, to me, if he were, if it were random, we would probably see some like murders close by. Um, but we don't see that in this particular case. So I think when you look at all the circumstances, you have to say this guy probably stalked these kids in some way prior to this particular meeting.
Yeah, use some kind of connection somehow, somewhere, some way, or else he just got really, really lucky. And it does happen. I mean, your odds of hitting the lottery are really, really horrible, but people do win. People do hit the lottery all the time. So, and it goes against the odds, but it happens. What's say? So you have to understand, this is my partner Frank Adamson talking about, he believes this was not random. He believes that these victims, Libby and Abby, were focused on and probably stalked in some way. We just can't figure it out. This is 4 years ago. Okay. And, I kind of agree with that. I do. But also, too, again, I have to go back to, some people, even though the odds are against them, do hit the Powerball or the Mega Million. They do hit the jackpot on the lottery. And you just wonder here if he got extremely lucky, like I mentioned, and these were just perfect victims of opportunity. And, he just happened to run into them, on that particular day. I'll tell you, I think it's too coincidental. And I don't believe in a whole lot of coincidences. So I wouldn't be surprised what we learn after we get the evidence from Richard Allen's trial. And we get to look at it, we get to understand it. Again, he's innocent of proven guilty. But this is pretty interesting. All righty. Next clip. When we talk about primary visual intake sense, people with primary visual intake senses like to do visual things. And, in our years, we've come across and landed on some of these guys. A couple of them are away now. They're not getting out. But I mean, people like to do visual things. I mean, they seem to be into photography. They enjoy photography, really can get into cameras. Gosh, so many of them are into art. They love art. Some are into drawing, reading. Okay. You know, when we look at visual people like to do visual things and usually excel at, their work and usually, have a focus on a hands-on kind of visual job. That's usually what their careers consist of. But something that really I think is important to understand too is that, in the off time and when they're trying to enjoy themselves, usually they're very visually creative with photography. And as we mentioned there, art, things like that. I've noticed people that have been predators that have ended up getting caught and being imprisoned are very focused on their art while they're in prison and the drawings that they do. Um, they don't take much, they don't do much photography because they're not allowed to. They don't have cameras in there. But on the outside, before they get arrested, photography is something that's big. It's usually very, very big. And we know with Richard Allen that they have confiscated numerous devices from his home. That's what we understand. Again, innocent until proven guilty. And of course, the defense really tried to get the search warrant tossed, but we're not able to. I am so curious on what they found in his house. I mean, extremely curious. Okay. Were there pictures that they found on these devices in his house? I know he was into, photography a little bit. In fact, down at CVS where he worked, he gave Libby's mother and father, the photographs for Libby. I think he said no charge, right? Something like that. So he did that well at CVS too. I guess he worked in the film development part of the store as well. Again, a hands-on visual kind of job, right? We have to wait and see. You let me know what your thoughts are on this. Again, we did this profile 4 years ago. And again, we did it because we felt some kind of word had to get out there to try and just jog somebody's memory to identify who Bridge Guy was. And can you imagine being a visual person? That's your primary intake sense, and you're watching TV, or you're looking online, wherever, and you're seeing, if you're a Bridge Guy, you're seeing yourself all the time on line or on TV because you have YouTubers constantly showing that video, law enforcement constantly showing the video that Libby took of Bridge Guy approaching them. So you actually see yourself there. And I think that, that would scare the hell out of him. And that probably one great reason why there weren't more victims. That Bridge Guy did not have more victims that we know of, because in his mind, in his head, he knows who Bridge Guy is. He's seeing himself. So again, not saying it's Richard Allen. This is a profile on Bridge Guy. We didn't know who Rich Allen was at the time. Okay, next clip.
An extension of this, I would say, it wouldn't be shocking that when the perp is caught, that he may have even taken pictures
That's right.
of his work, to obviously remember, and they get the picture and they get, sexually stimulated. That's why many perps we know take trophies, small ones, could be underwear, could be, necklace, driver's license, something. But they periodically go back and look at them and, have sexual fantasies and sexual thoughts, even, sexual activities. So when the person's caught, I wouldn't be surprised if they find them. They usually are well hidden, and they don't keep them like on the desk, and in their on their kitchen table. But yeah, so that would be more evidence of his primary intake sense being visual. Um, we got to catch him first to see if that's true.
Frank, any more on that?
Oh, I basically believe that this person was a hunter and stalker, and those are visual
Dynamics, traits,
yeah.
whatever you
I
wanna
mean,
call
it demonstrates that this person was visual in his intake.
So there you have Dr. Mirsky. I mean, I think he summed it all up. Okay, no question about it. I mean, these guys, like I said, are so visual, they're so interested. The vast majority of them are visual, are so interested in looking at the trophies so they can relive the fantasy. Trophies can be the pictures. Trophies can be garments. Trophies can be just about anything that turns them on. We've seen a lot of undergarments as trophies. We've seen some people keep physical parts of victims as trophies. But they want to look at it. They want to look at it. That's what the big piece is here. And that's where the photography comes in. Because the way things are today with technology and the modern era we live in with technology, all a predator has to do is pull out his phone, snap a couple of pictures, right? And he's got his trophies, and he can go home or wherever he's going and relive the fantasy. Because again, it's all about the fantasy. I truly believe with poor Libby and Abby, this was all fantasy driven by Bridge Guy, whoever Bridge Guy may be, and we shall see. But I would also put out there, I think we're dealing with a very hypersexual kind of individual. This is where this visual intake sense comes in. A couple of the people we've landed on. One was a contractor. He was a carpenter. He was into carpentry work. Another one was a landscaper. He did landscaping. These are very hands-on and visual, blue-collar kinds of jobs. Usually these are, like you said, Eddie, blue-collar kinds of jobs. Truck driving, you gotta be pretty visual to be a good truck driver, especially on the highways today. You gotta see where you're going. You gotta know where you're going.
Well, I would say it's very difficult to be specific if you want to.
Yeah, it's so many. There's so many.
Yeah, you're talking millions of jobs that obviously involve,
Yeah.
At least moderate.
Yeah.
At least moderate to high amounts of visual acuity. But a specific job, we can say blue collar, but that's, like you said, that's 80 million, 90 million jobs. Other than that, it's awfully difficult. Just look at all the serial killers that we've studied for many years. Look at their backgrounds, quite diverse.
Yeah.
Yes, to me, the question is, what does this guy like to do in his spare time? And I think that he's an outdoor person. I mean, this is a cold time of year. He's out there, and it's just a natural thing for him. He's dressed for the outdoors, and he's definitely um, the kind of person that's going to enjoy the outdoors, is going to enjoy the sights and scenes that he can see in that environment. So I think you have to kind of go back to when you're thinking about, well, what does this guy do as an occupation? I want to know also, what does he do in his spare time?
Excellent point. What is he doing? He's probably an outdoors kind of guy. All right, yeah, there you have it, folks. I mean, I've got Dr. Mirsky talking about, there's so many different jobs. How do you know what kind of job he did? And you have, him talking about blue collar. The one thing we do believe is the guy is blue collar. We don't believe he's white collar. Could have been, 4 years ago, but we focused more on blue collar, hands-on kind of job, and that's what we believe, Bridge Guy would do, kind of work he would do. Just happens that Richard Allen had a hands-on blue collar kind of job. Again, innocent until proven guilty. And also you have Frank Adamson talking about, he's interested in what Bridge Guy did in his spare time. Major piece. That's a major piece. What did he do in his spare time? And, bottom line is, being in the outdoors, like Frank said. I mean, Frank summed it up extremely well. Being in the outdoors, he would probably like to do outdoor kind of things in his spare time. Okay. Now, that can be a number of things, but, being dressed for the day or making sure he's dressed, not to be identified too well, which he did, again, very visually oriented, so somebody couldn't get a good look at him. He was able to maneuver around. He was dressed for the day. He had everything, Rich Guy had everything planned out there, no question about it. So in his spare time, we'd have to think that, somebody maybe that likes to participate in outdoor activities, and certainly hiking the trails and looking and sightseeing, and maybe taking some pictures is definitely along with, of course, if he's a hunter, which we believe he is too, or fisherman. That's definitely where we believe he would spend his free time and leisure time enjoying the outdoors. Hey, everybody, there you have it. And many thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate it. One part that we did not bring out that we did have in the profile was we were very focused on Bridge Guy being involved in porno. Was it sadistic hard porno or not is up in the air. We don't have an agreement on that. I also want to apologize for calling Becky Patty Libby's mother. It's Libby's grandmother. Becky Patty is Libby's grandmother. And also I want to apologize for the problems we're having with the internet. Seems the whole area is experiencing problems with the internet here, and it's seems like it's pretty stressed out, especially when it's hooked up with Zoom. With all this being said, again, we can't thank you enough. We look forward to your feedback, your comments. We truly appreciate you. Again, if you like it, hit us, give us a like. If you want to subscribe, please feel free to subscribe. We always love to have you, love to make you part of the team. Most importantly, take care of yourselves out there. We live in a dangerous world. Please be vigilant, stay on your toes. And, until we meet again, take care, have a great day, and God bless.